Okay.
Oh.
Shri Mataji,
Okay.
thank you so much for joining this evening. Kay O'Connell, you've been in our panel of Golden Memories way back when we started, and thank you for organizing this session. We're very pleased to have Kingsley, Jeremy, and Bill with us, and it is what was the collective in Brighton, I presume, the southeast of England, in the heart of the universe. Would you start by telling us when it was that Sahaja Yoga started and how in Brighton, please?
That would be 1979, I suppose. Would everyone agree with that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Would that
You were there before me, Kingsley. So.
The summer or?
No, towards I suppose around October. I had a very strange girlfriend, and once she went up to London, and I didn't see her for some weeks, and then she came back at the weekend and said, I've met this group of people who are going around in a van giving self-realization. And I said, oh, really? I said, because I had sworn I would never have a guru, because there were, Brighton was, there were all kinds of gurus there. Absolutely. And I knew a chap who got involved with TM and just went grey and shriveled up, basically. I mean, it was horrible. So I swore never a guru. And I said, well, what's it about? And she said, well, it's this lady who's a guru, and she's also a mother. And I thought, well, that's nice. So then, very shortly after that would have been late summer, I went up to London with a girlfriend of a friend, and we went to Caxton Hall.
Amazing. And how was that? Is that the first time you saw Shri Mataji?
Yeah, we went up there. We were a bit late on coming from the train in Brighton, and we went into Caxton Hall, and there's all these shoes outside, and I thought, oh, this is a serious affair then. And so
you knew the significance.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I mean, it's politeness anywhere, in any case, to take your shoes off. But certainly, if you're going to meet a guru, to take shoes off. I mean, it's common sense. I was always a seeker; it just made sense. And so we went into through this door, and there was a medium-sized room, and right up one end was a tiny Indian lady in a huge wooden chair. And the room was virtually full. And she saw us coming in, and she said, "Oh, come in. There's room at the front." So
right at the front.
So there we were, just right near her in a seat, and she proceeded to talk about all kinds of things that were very interesting, including drugs and what have you, with which I'd been quite happily involved for the previous sort of 9 years. And that was how I met Shri Mataji. And then later on, of course, we were all introduced to her by the people who were there from London. And and she worked on us and asked our names and put her foot on my back.
What's your most remarkable, absolutely, that's imprinted on you from that day?
Yeah, of course.
With Shri Mataji.
Yeah.
What was the question, I think?
Oh, what was imprinted on me? Well, it just seemed the most natural thing. I mean, if I were honest with you, I mean, I'd been a very passionate. I was always a seeker. I was curious about everything from an age of being a toddler, and went through passionate Christianity, years of happy hippiedom.
Yes.
The I Ching, Egyptology, astrology, all that business, and lots of hashish. And when the time came, it was the most natural thing of all. It was the natural progression to meet the right person at the right time. I mean, it was wonderful.
Yes, it is. I mean,
it made complete sense.
That can happen, absolutely.
It wasn't one of those sort of like electric light moments that people often have. And also, not only that, but when my girlfriend first worked on me before I went to London, it felt kind of familiar, because I'd already worked out that if you weren't true to yourself, you would be, your spirit would be to the left or to the right of your body somehow. It was a weird concept. And so it made complete sense. What about the others? There you are.
Yes, let's go on to Jeremy.
Right.
and then
Well-
Kay and Phil in that order, please, if you may,
Okay.
or however
Yeah,
you
well,
may like, please.
I came a bit later. Kay was before me.
Go on
I-
then, yes, Kay. I think, Kay, if you could just remind us again. I know you've mentioned these things in our previous interview, but that was way back. If you
Okay,
don't
so
mind.
yeah, so I was living in Brighton, and with Simon, who I sort of was later married to, and we were living in a little bedsit, and we had a sort of a friend or someone that we knew who lived a few doors down. He was really our drug dealer. He used to come and, you know, used to kind of supply us with cannabis and various things. So we sort of got to know him, and then one day he disappeared. And I mean, there's a whole nother story about how we met him, but I won't. That's quite funny, but I won't go into that now.
Okay.
But we met him. Then he disappeared, and a few months later, sort of down on the seafront in Brighton, sort of looked up and suddenly saw him, but he looked so different. He kind of looked really well, and the way he dressed, he looked so, before he looked really sort of scruffy and, you know, looked a bit sort of on his last legs, but he just looked completely different. And he said, oh, I've met an Indian lady. He said, I'll come round and tell you all about it. So the next day he came round, sort of in the evening. He came in, and we had this little basement bed set, and the walls were covered of pictures with deities. We had an Indian shop in Brighton, and what was it called? I can't remember what it was called now, but you know, it was the one shop, and you could go in and buy all the sort of pictures of the deities. So we had the walls kind of covered in pictures of deities, and so he came in and looked around, and he said, oh, that's interesting. We were smoking a joint. He said, well, you can put that out for a start. Right. Oh, okay. So so then he worked on us both, and I don't know what I felt. I mean, I definitely felt something, but I mean, I suppose, you know, it was it's already sort of feeling a bit sort of a bit off my head with the cannabis. So I didn't feel too much. I think I felt a bit of a cool breeze. But that night I had a dream, and in the dream I saw Mother on the top of a hill, and she was sort of speaking to multitudes of people, and it was such a deep, kind of profound dream. And when I woke up the next morning, I just knew, you know, I just knew who she was.
Wow.
And I think when Jeremy was, that was the name of the person that that gave us our realization. He was the Jeremy Crisp. And
oh my goodness, yeah.
yeah. When he was working on us, it suddenly clicked, because I'd sort of been reading quite a bit about yoga and meditation, and I sort of read a book by a guy called, I think it was Richard Hittleman, who used to do yoga on the TV, and I bought a book by him, and in it described all the paths of yoga, and also kind of explained that about self-realization and all the rest of it. So Jeremy was kind of sort of explaining about the different deities, you know, kind of pointing to the deities on the wall. And then I sort of thought, oh, so I said, oh, are you saying that Shri Mataji's come sort of now? So he sort of said, yes, you know, but I didn't feel that straight away. But the next morning after this dream, I kind of felt, yeah, that was it. I just knew. No, yeah, that was, and then after that met Kingsley and Pam and Ray, and yeah,
So
various
this is again the
other
summer
people.
of the 1980s.
Yeah, that would have been, yeah, sort of, the end of 79, I think. was when I first, when we got our realization. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. And you got your realization from this dealer circles.
Yes, yeah. Well, he'd already come to Sahaja Yoga, but
amazing how the divine play is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, please carry on.
Yeah, well, that's me. So yeah, Jeremy, I don't know, or Phil. I don't...
Phil was even a little bit before me, but I'll go if you want. Yeah, I mean, funny thing is that I mean, do you want to know how I came to Sahaja Yoga? Or...
Yes, please.
Right. So it was very interesting. I think Mother protected me from this bunch, because I was looking for a place to live in Brighton. And, I'd never been to Brighton, and I just had this kind of desire to go and live in Brighton. In fact, we've never told each other these stories. It's quite interesting.
No.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and I was I got a job in Haywards Heath in a marine insurance company. I mean, it was deadly boring, but it got me to a place near Brighton, because my family comes from north of London. So, and I don't really even remember why I wanted to go to Brighton, but I was drawn to Brighton. So I was looking for places to live, and just when I found a place that was suitable, they said, "Oh no, terribly sorry, no, it's just gone." And this happened so many times. And then I found this room in a house in Brighton, and I phoned up, and the lady answered and said, "Oh, terribly sorry, it's just gone." And I said, yeah, typical, yeah. And she said, "Well, there might be another possibility. Why don't you come along?" So I went along, and I've always been very suspicious, a bit like Kingsley, always very suspicious of gurus or anything Indian, because in the village that I was living in beforehand, there was the Hare Krishna mob. And I went along once, and I thought, my God, I'm never going to do anything like that. So, because I mean, I'd never done drugs, I'd never done false gurus, none of this business. So, and that's another funny story. When I introduced my brother, Shri Mataji said, "Oh, thank goodness some normal people coming to Sahaja Yoga now." It's like, anyway, so yeah, so I saw this picture of Shri Mataji on the door of this house, and I was really in two minds whether to go in. And just when I was thinking of going away, the door opened, and this big lady appeared with a huge grin and said, come in, and it was Pamela. And I go in, and there's all these pictures of Shri Mataji all over the walls and down the stairs. And we went and sat down in her little basement, and she offered me a cup of tea, and she was doing this sort of movement on her cup of tea, and I said, "Are you looking for a spoon or something? What are you doing?" She says, "No, I'm vibrating my tea." And I thought, "Oh my God, she's really away with the fairies, this one." And but the interesting thing, we got talking about spirituality, and I'd had some experiences, but nothing like this. And she was on the same kind of wavelength. So she said, "Oh, you must get your realization, So she pulled away there was a kind of curtain in the middle of the room, and she pulled it aside. And there was a huge altar with all the photos of Mother and the feet and everything. I mean, it was all there.
Wow.
And she gave me my realization. I didn't feel much, but I didn't feel anything physical, but I felt a kind of joy inside of me, and I felt I'd really found something important, And interestingly, Shri Mataji had been there, and there was a puja there the week before in that room.
Amazing.
And so she said, "Oh, well, I've given away my room, but now you must stay. You must come and stay." So I had didn't have a choice. Poor what was it, Matthew? But she kicked Matthew out of his room and put me in his room.
Oh, bless.
Matthew with his son, with her son. And anyway, it was, but the funny thing is, I'd always had this kind of secret desire to be amongst hippies, because I was never a hippie. I came from a sort of middle-class family, a bit like Kingsley, but I'd never had the courage, I was a bit young for the hippie period anyway, but I'd always had a kind of secret longing, and probably because they were seekers, and I didn't really know what I was seeking, but I felt maybe they could, they had found some answers, and so it's another example of how Mother fulfills every little desire.
Absolutely.
Because Brighton was the hippie center of Sahaja Yoga, no doubt. The kind of the gentle hippies. There were the other people who were more kind of into full screws and stuff, and hippies in London. But in Brighton, there was a lovely little family of very gentle people, and I really felt I'd found my family. This was another very strong feeling.
That when you got your realization, please remind us when you got your realization.
Sorry, yes, it was autumn, sort of September, October time. I didn't keep a note, but it was 1980, yeah. And the funny thing is that I felt all these guys have been in for years, because time moved very, very fast in those days. If you'd been in Sahaja Yoga 3 months, or let's say a couple of years, you were an avatar, you were really someone.
We had Shri Mataji with us. We had her there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It went very fast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And because it seemed like these people had been doing it for years, and I came in, and I remember meditating in Kingsley's little flat under the pyramid. He had a
Pyramid.
He had a pyramid.
Yes.
I remember it clearly. It was like red. It was a wooden pyramid, painted red, wasn't it, Kingsley?
Pink. Bright pink.
Bright pink, yes.
5 foot high scale model of the Cheops pyramid.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
And
you could sit under.
Yes.
yeah, and if you were really, really honored, you would be allowed to sit under it,
And the altar was next to it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't much room for anything else.
And you could feel a cool breeze coming out the top of it.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good. That's right. And it was a privilege to meditate under it. And then at the end of the evening, Kingsley had this enormous teapot, and he made cups of tea for me.
Yes.
It was so. This was all part of the family atmosphere that Jeremy was alluding to. It was really nice.
Wow.
It was really good.
Yeah, because we were all lost, and really, I really felt like an alien. Like I identified with the Little Prince, like a lot of people do. That I really felt that I was on the wrong planet. Because I thought either I was crazy or everybody else was crazy. Because there was no connection until I found this group of people, and I really felt. And I must say, a lot of it was thanks to Simon and Jeremy Christ, who they were referring to. He really helped me, because I really feel you need someone at the beginning. If you don't have someone who you can connect to, or who spends a bit of time with you, or it's extremely difficult to come in, because I remember the feeling there was a kind of an abyss between me and them, and unless there is someone to help you across that divide, it's very, very difficult to come in, because you've got to basically leave everything that then especially you have to leave everything that you had, and all your friends. I remember Simon going through my address book saying, the vibrations are terrible, throw it away. So that was like all my connections. He got me to get rid of all my record collection. So it was serious stuff in those days. You were either in or you weren't.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And when was your first meeting with Shri Mataji then? Because you mentioned the puja happened the week before you got your realization, which must have been incredible because the vibrations
Yeah.
with a Sakshat puja with Shri Mataji.
Yeah. I mean, in those days, we were literally hand-picked, I mean, Mother, like I say, oh, are you still there? I lost the picture. But yeah. So Mother would literally handpick. I mean, I remember one story of someone, I'm not quite sure who it was, in London. They saw a poster of Shri Mataji advertising a program, I think in Caxton Hall, and they said, like, no way would I go to something like that. They went home, and the next thing they found is they were in the program, they were in the hall, with Shri Mataji, So, and a little bit similar for me, as I say, because there was no way I had any intention of doing anything cultish or Indian or anything. But my first meeting must have been, I think, a Hampstead program. Hampstead Heath, there was some meetings there. May have been Caxton Hall, but I remember particularly, I remember a small meeting. So I think, I think it was Hampstead. It was a small room. Because Caxton Hall was a large room, and there are other stories about that. But I remember particularly that Shri Mataji was looking in my direction, but it wasn't like she was looking at me. She was like looking through me, and I kept on looking around to see what she was looking at or who she was looking at, and there was no one there. So it was like she was just looking through me. And I suppose working on me at the time, and I just felt the full attention, I mean, the full force of the Adi Shakti, on me. And that was very powerful. That was my first impression. But I can't tell you exactly when it was. I'm afraid I didn't take notes, and rather sadly, I didn't keep a diary in those days. So
no problem.
But it was, right at the end of 1980.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. Phil?
Okay, well, I actually started seeking consciously in my teens, having seen a map of the world in an atlas with different countries in different colors, and colors represented the religions in those countries. So Iran was pale green because these were Shia Muslim, and India was orange, these people were Hindus, and England was pink because we were Protestants, and France was red because they were Catholics, and so on. And I realized that if I'd been born somewhere else, I wouldn't be going to church with my parents. We'd probably be going to the mosque or to the temple. And so I started asking around, what do all these religions have in common? Which is the right one? And obviously at church that didn't go down very well, and I found that nobody was really interested in answering the question or even interested in the question. And at the time I was going to a confirmation class. Confirmation of a church, you confirm yourself as a member of the church. And so I was repeating these same questions in the class. And to this day, I'm proud of the fact that not only did I not get confirmed, but nobody else from the class got confirmed. So, and then after that, before going to university, I went to work in Berlin for 6 months. And there I met this this German guy who'd been to India and lived in an ashram somewhere and learned Indian music. And he came and gave a sort of evening concert at the place where I was living. And I liked the guy, and I could see that India had done something to him, which I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I wanted to have it. He was different, his priorities were different, the way he talked was different, and I liked this very much. So I resolved, after university, I wanted to go to India, which I did. And in India, read lots of books, visited various false gurus, and tried this yoga, that meditation, and after several months, I was in quite a mess. So I sort of mentally tossed a coin. Do I go to Burma and become a monk, Buddhist monk, or do I go back to the West and live a normal existence? And we came to the decision to go back to the West. And on my way going through Delhi, I went to visit my first false guru, who, I mean, he did this sort of 10-day yoga and meditation course, which we were doing some hatha yoga, and we were hyperventilating and saying Om, 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 and you were supposed to see colors and lights. And I didn't. I was a bit disappointed, but still, he seemed quite sincere and honest, and he wasn't, as far as I could tell, he wasn't into power or money. And so I went along to his place and I started telling him all that I'd been doing, and that I was in a mess, and that I was completely confused. What do I do now? And I noticed he had a little diagram on the wall showing the Kundalini and the chakras. And I asked him to explain a bit, and he started to explain. The first chakra is about innocence and wisdom. The second chakra, creativity. And the third chakra is satisfaction, and so on. I thought, wow, this is beautiful. This makes sense. I can relate to this. Tell me more. And he said, okay, I'm just going to check on the state of your chakras. I thought, God, what a saint. He can feel other people's chakras. I can't even feel my own. And he put this black and white photograph of this Indian lady on a little altar and said, this is Shri Mataji Nirmala Devi. Hold out your hands. See if you can feel anything. So I did. I felt on my hands, I felt nothing at all. But as he went behind me and started raising my Kundalini, I started feeling hotter and hotter. I mean, you could almost have fried an egg on top of my head. And after about half a minute, the room in which we were sitting was becoming darker and darker. And almost the only thing I could see was these waves of light coming from Shrimatiji's right hand. And after, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, I couldn't handle this any longer. And just as the Kundalini rises in a split second, there's a certain movement in the opposite direction, which was almost as fast. And I had to run to the bathroom. And so a rapid clear out. Then I came back, and he was a bit concerned because he'd never seen anyone react quite like that before. And he said, when you get back to London, you must go and see Shri Mataji. She's the only person who can do anything for you, either spiritually or physically. And I'd never had an experience remotely like this at all. And even though it had been quite a drastic clear out, it still had me feeling, there's something good going on here, something right. And so I went back to the youth hostel where I was staying, lightened my luggage considerably by throwing a lot of books of false gurus in the trash, and carried on traveling overland through India, Pakistan, Iran, which was possible in those days. And about a month later, I found myself, it was. It's a different story. About a month later, I found myself in Switzerland, visiting my brother, who was working in the village outside Lausanne. And I was sitting in his room, and because I was quite bored, I was reading the local newspaper. And because I was really quite bored, I was reading the advertisements in the newspaper even. There I saw this same photograph of this Indian lady. And the text, for the first time in Switzerland, Shri Mataji Nirmala Devi talks about self-realization and the demystification of false gurus. And that was Shri Mataji in Lausanne that evening.
Wow.
So I borrowed some clothes from my brother because my own, after a year and a half on the road, were not in a good state, and went along to the program. And was wonderfully impressed. I mean, we were sitting there surrounded in this very respectable hotel room, the Hôtel de la Paix in Lausanne, surrounded by very respectable Swiss people, and there was I, this sort of English hippie. And Shri Mataji came in and launched into a very powerful and very funny speech. And what impressed me very much was that with all the false gurus, they try to give you the impression that they are more powerful than you are. They are more holy, they are more knowledgeable, they are wiser than you are. They really put themselves on a sort of pedestal. They are great and you are small. And with Shri Mataji, it was not at all like that. She was just being her motherly self, making a lot of fun of all this nonsense that I and presumably other people have been doing. And the whole thing was sort of very enjoyable, and Shri Mataji was very motherly,
What
sort of
year was that,
radiating
Phil?
love. It was
What year?
this was 23rd or so of April. Yeah, in Delhi this was 20th of March 1980, and this was now about a month later, so it will be the first program in Lausanne, 1980, April
Wow.
1980.
Amazing. So,
And at the end of the program, oh yes, at one point in the program, Shri Mataji looked straight at me and said, "He's got it. May God bless you." And,
wow.
and then after the program, new people were invited to the flat where Shri Mataji was staying, and Shri Mataji was working on various people. This was tremendously impressive to see because Shri Mataji would be putting her foot on the void of this person here, who's sitting in front of her, and working on this person here, and working on this person here, and checking with that person there that they were looking out, that they were holding their hands out of the window to clear out as you'd recommended, and at the same time pursuing a conversation with other people who were sitting around. I mean, she was tremendously dynamic. And then there was another program that evening. This was when Matthias came for the first time. If you remember, Matthias from Switzerland. And he was asking Shri Mataji a lot of questions about macrobiotics.
Oh,
And after this program, there was talk of this Hindu ceremony, which is going to take place the next day, a puja.
oh,
And although I'd been in South Asia for quite a while, I'd never actually been to a puja. And it sounded very interesting. So I started asking, can I come to this puja thing? And I asked Gregoire, who seemed to be sort of organizing things, and he was a bit shocked and launched into a recital of all the good reasons why new people with vibrations who are pretty much in tatters like mine should take their time to sort of understand things vibrationally, to clear out, to gain an understanding of who Shri Mataji is. And he was going through this catalogue of good reasons when Shri Mataji walked past and said, "What does he want?" "Oh, he wants to come to the puja, mother." "Yes, yes, he can come." So that was my first puja the next day. We again in the flat where Shri Mataji had been staying. We were about 15 to 20 people, and I remember there were a lot of things read in Sanskrit, and then something was read in English about a goddess, a great goddess killing demons. And basically, mentally, I understood practically nothing. I mean, why are they reading this? But at the same time, inwardly, I was kind of telling my mind to shut up because I had this feeling that something very auspicious and very beautiful and very important and very sacred was taking place, and that I was privileged to be part of it. And at the end of the puja, everybody bowed down to Shri Mataji, and when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So I also bowed down to Shri Mataji, and Shri Mataji said to Gregoire, look how he's sucking vibrations. Speaking of me. And from the tone of her voice, I didn't know what vibrations were, much less did I know what sucking vibrations meant. But from the tone of Mother's voice, I understood that I was doing something right. And so that was my first meeting with Shri Mataji and my first puja the next a couple of days later. And then went on back to England, found myself at my parents' place up in the north of England, trying to meditate with this photograph of Shri Mataji and frankly, not feeling anything. And I had this sort of fading memory of this beautiful experience in Switzerland, which was not coming back. I tried to meditate and I felt nothing at all, apart from feeling a bit stupid. And at one point, I phoned the ashram. This was Dollis Hill Ashram, and somebody answered the phone and said, "Yes, you must come to London and you must see Shri Mataji at Caxton Hall." And at the time, I'd been suffering from a sort of constant chronic diarrhea, largely due to false gurus. And I noticed that after this phone call, this cleared up for about 3 days. Mm. And a couple of weeks, 10 days or a couple of weeks later, I again phoned the ashram, and again the same thing happened. And I realized, something going on here. So I made a trip to London and went to visit Dollis Hill Ashram, which was at the time occupied by some, let's say, eccentric people. But they at least told me that there was going to be a seminar that coming weekend and that I could come to. This was a seminar at Old Alresford, which would be a weekend with Shri Mataji and with the Sahaja Yogis. And so that was I hitchhiked to Winchester and made my way to Old Alresford by bus. And that was my first meeting with the big UK collective in Shri Mataji's presence. And that was a very beautiful weekend. And after that, I was looking to do some postgraduate study. And I decided I wanted to go somewhere where there were yogis. And for the postgraduate study, I had the choice either of the Open University at Milton Keynes or Sussex University, Brighton. And in Brighton, there were yogis, and so that decided it. And so I arrived in Brighton in August 1980, about a month after Mother had been here for pujas and program. And met up with the yogis, started visiting Kingsley's place on Thursday evenings for meditation. Then we had the programs in Wagner Hall. Mm-hmm. And so it went on. So those were my early days.
Amazing recounting. I mean, straight from self-realization at sort of a yoga teacher in Delhi to puja with Shri Mataji in a couple of days' time. That's quite an initiation, if one could put it like that. And when you were up north on your own, you didn't feel the vibrations, even with Shri Mataji's photograph. But when you were with the collective or Sahaja Yogis, that changed, did it?
Yeah, I mean, always as a general rule, when you meditate in the collective,
yes,
as a rule, you have a better meditation than if you sit by yourself at home. And if you are completely new and you are still pretty caught up and you are at your parents' place with all the conditionings, my parents had lots of books, for example, of your previous life, and you just have this black and white photograph of Shri Mataji, and you sit on the end of your bed and you hold out your hands and you don't feel anything and you don't go thoughtless. you start wondering, was this just a dream? Or
Yes.
so
Yeah. Doubts start
so
coming.
it's really the collective that pulled me out of that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your stories about how you got your self-realization and your first meeting with Shri Mataji. What was the first remarkable thing in preparation to this interview? There must have been some things that you really want to share with all of us and for seekers in the future as well. What was it in Brighton, being with Shri Mataji or meditating? Would you like to start, please? Okay.
Okay. So I think at the time there were a few of us, and we were all, I think we were like a family. It did feel like finding your family, and you know, the people that you'd always wanted to be with. And I remember we used to go up to London every sort of Monday, up to Caxton Hall, quite often on a Sunday up to Dollis Hill to the ashram to see Mother. But in London, everyone was quite, it was quite different. Everyone was quite serious, and
Yes.
and
No smiles.
it used to be, sometimes you'd go, you'd want to go, and you'd really want to be there with Mother, and you wouldn't not go, but at the same time, you know, you had people walking around with, you know, just kind of in balaclavas with ghee up their nose, and you know, it was it was just really odd, you know. So but in Brighton we had, I mean, we just had, it just felt like we had such a good time together, you know. We just really enjoyed each other's company, and I kind of look back on it now as one of the sort of best times of my life, you know. It was just so much fun. And but I mean, we had, you know, there were things that that kind of happened there. I mean, one of them, which I mean, I think we've probably talked about before, but we did all get possessed at one point, and mesmerized by a man that came along. And I think, I mean, maybe because we were all, you know, we were all kind of, I suppose, a bit in the left, you know, sort of hippie types, and very, very trusting of everyone, and you know, thought everyone was lovely, you know. And I think, you know, we you know, not completely sort of connected to reality in many ways. And so yeah, this man came along, and came to a meeting. I think, I mean, it was one of the kind of early meetings, I think, wasn't it? I can't remember. Phil
Possibly
might know.
1982.
1982.
1980. 1980.
Was it really?
1982.
Definitely, yes.
Were you all four there then? Sorry. All four were you there when this?
Must have been 80, because it was just before I came.
Okay, it was at Brighton Pavilion, yeah. Brighton, was it not, Philip?
So
Yes.
that little, was that? Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
No, we only had a program in the pavilion in 83, I think. I don't know where the program was in 80, because I wasn't there.
There was a little place you had to go up the stairs, and there was just a little room. I don't know what it was called.
I think I'd so I think it was sometime in 1980, because I remember I'd only had my realization about 6 months or so.
Okay.
When he came along, because I remember feeling so disappointed. So Mother came to the meeting, and there were a few new people there, but there was this man sort of sat at the back who looked a bit like a, you know, yeah, your typical kind of hippie guru sort of person.
I thought he looked like Jesus. I mean, he had long hair and aquiline features.
Yeah,
he looked like the Roman Jesus, and he sat there.
Yes.
Yeah.
A bit like the traits of the German artist Albrecht Dürer.
Yeah, and we asked him,
long beard. Yeah.
And Mother was coming round to talk to us all and work on the new people. And we asked him what his name was. And he said very gravely, his name is Michael. And we thought, hello, 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 Michael. So, you know, being, as Kay puts it very nicely, very sweetly, we were, I suppose, quite naive in a way. And we thought, hello, Archangel Michael or something. He had that air about him.
Yes.
And if you see Paul Winter's account, which is from completely the other side of things, he was apparently a friend of his and from before. And Paul had no idea he was coming.
I remember, I mean, we were meditating once as part of a speech listening in a meditation, and Shri Mataji, the way she was telling off the yogis, I suppose, who were mesmerized by this gentleman, and something that it would be nice if you could share, because even now, with all the knowledge and the blessings she has granted us, one is still prone to give into the human traits and
these ones aren't
astray.
These ones aren't, Sushmita. These ones aren't, because we had this experience, and it was such a valuable experience, because this fellow insinuated himself into the group, and in fact, Shri Mataji came round. He stood up. She embraced him and said, "Until you came, Michael, there was only me to do the work." And this was what really impressed us, you see.
Yeah.
And Paul Winter will tell you, well, he was nothing. He was rubbish. Blah, blah, blah. Well, no, Paul wasn't there when this happened, and so he came into the group, and over a period of weeks, he got closer and closer to everyone. And what we noticed, although it wasn't obvious at the time, looking back, was that our meditations were less intense. We were less warm and loving with each other, because we were very close, and we still are. I mean, it's amazing to join this thing today, because hearing all of this is just so fresh and amazing. And there are stories, Jeremy, you never told me all this. And, you know, and eventually he got to the point where he said, you know, well, he was telling us that in London, we shouldn't go up to London anymore, because there was a TM cell there, and we were like the Holy Grail. We were the good ones. We thought, wow, this is amazing, and it was very powerful. He had cities. There's no two ways about it. I remember once walking down from Brighton Clock Tower, and he came out from the shop front and walked up to me and looked me in the eyes, and I thought, hello, he's reading my mind. I mean, he could read your mind via the optic nerve, if you like. He had cities. Yeah, he had what we understand as cities. So anyway, eventually it got to the point where he said, the Holy Spirit can never incarnate as a human being anyway, and you shouldn't go up to London anymore. And Phil and I, we said, hang on a minute, no one's going to stop us going up to see our mother. It got really bad over a period of several weeks, and everyone was barking.
But it went, yes. It went in little by little, easy steps.
Yes.
He was separating us from the collective as a whole, and separating us from Shri Mataji in easy steps.
Yes.
So, I mean, for
actually
example, at one point, at one point, he suggested, you know, we mustn't take too much vibrations from Shri Mataji. We must let her recover. And so he had us meditate on a rose. Something
I don't remember that. Amazing.
And on another occasion, he said, you know, you have to love each other. So he had all the guys basically hug all the girls. And that,
really? I don't remember that.
I remember. I bloody forget it. But I remember hugging one of the girls, and it felt completely off. And it didn't go any further than that.
Thank God.
But the direction of travel was given. And we were told, oh yeah, when you're sufficiently possessed, which we were, you can feel vibrations where there aren't any. For example, he recommended that we take the vibrations of the London collective. And it was so hot, it would have killed a horse. And he was saying that important people in the London collective are trying to sabotage Sahaja Yoga, and that we should have nothing to do with the London collective.
Did you
As it
guys feel
happened,
anything on
Shri Mataji had
your
expressed
vibration?
concern. Well, we felt something, whether it was on vibrations, I'm not sure.
I felt less and less
you could
cool
feel
vibration.
cool when, yes, you could feel cool in sort of intense, cold, cool, where normally you wouldn't feel anything. And when you meditated, you just felt you were all over the place.
So eventually, Phil, eventually, Phil and I got in the train to London, got up there late to the program. I think it was at Caxton, and we were sort of whispering as we went in. People saying, "Oh, there you are," because they hadn't seen Brighton people for a while. We saying, "There's something going on in Brighton. What's it?" So afterwards, we went and told Mataji what was happening, and to our astonishment, she rocked with laughter. And she said, "Oh, really?" She said, "You'd better come back to my apartment, my flat."
Yes, I didn't dare go up on the stage, but I saw you, Kingsley, on the stage. You were kneeling in front of Shri Mataji, and she was going like that to you. And I could see people around who were quite amused. I mean, at the beginning of the program, we arrived at the program, and there, I mean, we were feeling horrible, basically. At least I was feeling absolutely horrible. And we see all the Sahaja Yogis around, and they seemed to be enjoying themselves so much, and they were so joyful and so light-hearted. And one of them came up to me and said, "Phil, you're looking a bit under the weather. Would you like some vibrations?" And we'd been instructed to have nothing to do with the London yogis, so I sort of declined with thanks and sat down in a remote corner of the auditorium. And then Shri Mataji arrived and launched into this powerful talk. And at the end of the talk, I had to admit that I felt a bit better than at the beginning of the talk, at the beginning of the evening. And then Kingsley had the courage to go and speak to Shri Mataji. And then we went down to Shri Mataji's apartment. And we found ourselves, if I remember rightly, we were sitting on the floor. Shri Mataji was sitting on the sofa, and we were sitting on the floor just in front of her. And other yogis were sitting behind us, and she asked us, "So, do I look like I'm losing my powers?" And we said, "No, Shri Mataji." And then she closed her eyes, and the room became very silent for a few seconds. And then she said, "Whatever has happened is forgiven. You must laugh at yourselves." And then afterwards, Shri Mataji gave a cup of tea to everybody. So there we were drinking lovely vibrated tea. And then we went back to Brighton with Paul Winter in his car. I think we had to stop once or twice because we had to throw up. Again, with the fast clear out. And Kingsley and I were in very high spirits and resolving, if this guy came again, we'd throw him downstairs. And we went to the next Wagner Hall program. That was the weekly program, armed with lots of lemons and chilies, and we put them in all corners of the room and so on.
I don't remember.
That was it for us. And then at Navaratri Puja.
Sorry, Phil.
But at Navaratri Puja, Shri Mataji had all the Brighton people come and sit round a havam.
Yeah.
This was rather unusual. The puja was immediately followed by a havam, and we had to sit there with pieces of coal in our hands, black coal, which we put into the fire. Yes, we put into the fire at the end of the havam as a way of clearing out.
And we had to say, when we held the piece of coal, and we had to say, "Mother, I will obey you for the rest of my life." And
so
then
the coal was in your right hand and the left hand to Shri Mataji. And then you offered the coal to the fire. That is a first.
Yes.
We haven't actually heard of this before.
Yeah. And then she said, she looked at us and she said, "Sorry, my children, but someone had to be crucified." So, as if it was something that had to happen.
Yes.
Because we had to know, we had to learn about the strength of our faith in her. and in ourselves. I don't remember the exact details that Phil recounts. It's very, very interesting. When we went to her flat, I remember walking in, and she looked, as I looked across at her, the only time I've ever seen her looking other than she always seems to look like. And she looked very, very young in a bubble, sort of a big bubble. And I remember her putting her hand on our heads and realizing in about 5 minutes that we had been hypnotized. And you always think that hypnotism happens because it's a stage thing, and when I clap my hands, you'll quack like a duck, or you'll smack your wife or something, sort of stage stuff like that. And that you have to be, everyone says you have to be willing to be hypnotized, or if you go to hypnotherapy, you have to know. And we hadn't known. It had happened in spite of ourselves. And this was the fantastic lesson. And this is why I say this will never happen to any of these people who were there at the time again. And when people come in Sahaja Yoga and they behave in that sort of, I would say, brutish way, you can smell it, you can feel it. And that was the lesson that she wanted to give us. And it's the most valuable lesson ever, I think.
Absolutely.
I think the message was that this could be useful for other people. Like even nowadays, there are people who, I wouldn't say hypnotized, but they do have maybe charisma, and they have groups, and they can be led off. I mean, I've been living in Italy, I've been living in Turkey, I'm in Turkey now, and I can tell you the common occurrence in these countries where they don't know Shri Mataji. The problem is where, and I'm sure it happens in India, it happens, it happens everywhere, where Shri Mataji isn't or hasn't been. And we had the advantage, and that's what I meant when I said at the beginning, Shri Mataji kept me away until all this was over, because I just came in at the tail end when he was being exposed, this guy. And that was my introduction. I thought, whoa, what the hell's going on here,
We lost a few people. We lost Jeremy Crisp went out, didn't he, Kay?
Later.
Was it then? Well, several people couldn't handle it because we had to go home. We had to go back to our little family and say, Phil and I, and say, it was a hoax. We were fooled. We were hypnotized. This was horrible, and some people couldn't take it.
How long did this hypnosis last? Because the thing is, even now, as Jeremy's mentioned, there are personalities, and Sahaja Yoga is open to everyone. And even with the best of intentions and our meditation and total dedication to Shri Mataji, one is still prone to weaknesses, shall we say? And so what are the lessons learned, and is there a way to prevent it?
I mean, you can learn from I always told my kids, I mean, you're going to have to learn from your mistakes, but it's much better if you learn from other people's.
Yes, that's the whole idea.
Yes. So if these, I mean, I mean, again, as I said, things were happening very quickly in those days. So Mother was working on so many levels, in so many things, and she was working, especially the full screws. Maybe she was working out all this business with full screws in this example, because very often what I found is what you had done before Sahaja Yoga, you had to go through again in Sahaja Yoga to clear it out. A lot of things, because, and it's not like everything was, a bed of roses when you come into Sahaja Yoga. A lot of people think, oh, now I don't have to suffer anymore. That isn't the case. Like, I remember there was a lovely occasion at the beginning. This was in Shelsham Road, and this was one of the most powerful lessons I learned. And Shri Mataji said, you see, the problem with you guys is you want to become the spirit, okay? But you don't know how to play the game. Oh, sorry. Yeah, she said, you want to play the game, but you don't know the rules.
Oh.
So it's like you all want to become the spirit. But when I help you become the spirit, you all say, oh no, mother, not like this, please, not like this, you know. But it's like you have to go through some tapas or some experience to lose whatever it is you have to lose of this artificialness, you know, or some, either if it's ego, superego, or conditioning, or arrogance, or whatever it is, you have to get rid of it in order to become the spirit. But it's like wanting to become the spirit, but not letting go of anything that you hold dearly, you know, like your little personality, you know. And this another thing she loved, you know, she used to make fun of people when they said they had a personality clash, you know, and she just loved it, you know. What is this personality clash, you know? And you know, because it's just identification, but that's the thing, because we didn't know the rules. We didn't know the rules, and that's why Mother forgave us so much at the beginning, because she didn't forgive India in the same way. She said, because Indians know the rules, but we didn't. We had no idea. And like Kingsley was saying, you know, we kind of thought that everything was a kind of bed of roses at the beginning, because for us it was to come from the hell that we were living or whatever, to come to this magic world around Shri Mataji. I mean, to be in the same room as Shri Mataji was literally heaven.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you just felt you wanted it to last forever. You know, you just didn't want to leave that room. And she was much more motherly, as they say, like the grandmother you never had. You know, she was like that lovely, like an auntie or a grandmother that you always wanted but you never had. You know, like something out of, I don't know, some sort of novel. And that connection that she knew, not only she knew you, she cared for you. She cared for each of us individually. She knew everything about us, and she just brought you into that lovely, warm, friendly, loving atmosphere that she created. And we were a family. You know, I mean, it was like that, you know, I mean, it really was a family feeling. I mean, okay, again, there were personality clashes and all the rest of it, but the basic thing is we were family. And it was small. I mean, the collective in London, collective in England, okay, there were maybe, I don't know, 40, 50 people, but everyone knew everyone. So it was like, you know, you really were a family.
Yeah, from what I can remember of this Michael, I think he flattered us. And I think he, you know, it was kind of an ego trip, really, because I mean, we didn't realize it was happening to us, but and I think that's what people do when they, you know, when they mesmerize you, they make you feel special. You know, they make you feel like you're the only ones that know what's going on. A bit like, it's kind of a bit like the conspiracy thing now, you know, like, you know, all these things like,
exactly that.
Yeah, everybody, it's like, and if you think you're the only one that really knows what's going on, you know, you feel very, you know, I don't know, it's, you know, it's an ego trip, really, you know, and I think we got well and truly sucked in. So but I do remember, sitting in Wagner Hall. We had a public program. I remember Kingsley and Phil coming back, and I remember you, Kingsley, coming into the room and going, "Guys, he's a fake. He's a fake." And the minute you said that, my Kundalini just shot up, and it was like, and that was it. And the spell was gone. The spell had broken. You know. So, yeah.
Amazing. Amazing times. It's very dramatic and very lighthearted at the same time, as well as a very serious reprimand, that speech of Shri Mataji that we're referring to in connection with this. And yes, it's very important, a reminder for us to have our dedication and devotion to Shri Mataji rather than any other sort of personalities as such.
Yeah, and we did suffer. I mean, you know, we did suffer for it, you know, or some of us. I mean, there was I mean, myself and Pam were, you know, were kind of probably more, you know, more sucked into it than Kingsley and Phil, and both of us ended up with cancer. So you know.
Oh, please elaborate on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so Pam had breast cancer, and I also ended up with cancer. I won't go into it all now because I think in the first Golden Memories I talked about that. But when Mother worked on me, she told me that it was because of, well, there were a few things, that I'd taken too many drugs. She mentioned drugs, a contraceptive pill, and she said, but it's this man, you know, this Michael, and yeah, and told me to go and rest in the room above her bedroom, and I went and lay down and fell asleep, and had a dream that was in a minibus full of yogis, and we ran over him. and then I woke up feeling much better.
Wow.
And yeah, and then after that, for the following kind of few weeks, I was sorry, I've got someone talking to me. Yeah, so yeah, after that, for the following few weeks, I mean, mother worked on me and cleared it out, but yeah, I was in quite a bad way, and that was, you know, that was as a result of that. So, you know, if you get drawn into these things, they're, you know, your system suffers. Your spirit suffers.
Amazing. Miracles that you'd like to share? Any outstanding miracles? I mean, for us, miracles become a norm, isn't it? Like every little thing that Shri Mataji does, we just sort of take it for granted. It's like, okay, you know, it's just a way of life. But in those days,
I think from a cultural point of view, you see, Shushmita, you come from a different area of Mother Earth to us, and you can't imagine how, light-hearted is the word you used earlier. This whole expression of Sahaja Yoga in our lives was. And for me, I mean, it wasn't quite like Jeremy. I mean, it was a completely natural phenomenon somehow. And in a sense, having used hash, it's very, very unpolitically correct to say this, but having had experience of happy hallucinogenic drugs, it kind of prepared me, in a sense, for for meeting all of these phenomena, because I come, you know, like most of us, I come from a post-war Western, an English comfortable sort of. I was an only child, but we lived an interesting time. If you were born just after the war, and the home counties and all of this kind of thing, it was cozy, English, blah 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 blah. And so, for me, having been quite abnormal all my life as a seeker, it was very, very, so for me, the miracle, and I never believed in miracle photographs. And I'll say this to you because a lot of people, most people say, oh, look at this. And I don't give a fig for miracle photographs. For me, I say to people these days, here I am, 40 years on from our marriage in Switzerland. Philip got his realization there and came to Switzerland. I was all over the place and ended up in Switzerland. And after 40 years of marriage, at Shri Mataji's suggestion, I mean, it was before there were ever, if you want a miracle, before there were ever marriage forms or marriage committee or anything like that.
Yes.
You know, and here I am today, and everything that's happening, and it occurs to me very metaphysically that everything that is happening is because of her. And my son, who was born in Sahaja Yoga, goes, well, of course, Dad, she's the Adi Shakti. It doesn't strike me like that somehow. I pull my ears. I mean, of course she is, but it's somehow as if I was born into it sort of ready-made somehow. You know, my first experience of Kundalini was rather like listening to a Carlos Santana guitar solo. I mean, beautiful, something up the spine, you know. And if you're lucky, as I have been, and everybody who knows me says I'm just so lucky. I mean, so the miracle really is to be existing in a world where there's Sahaja Yoga and this wonderful family, and here we are, my wife and I, in Switzerland, in a marvelous collectivity, and with old friends in London, in England, and what have you. And it's bliss. I mean, you want miracles, life itself, you know. And looking around at the state of the world in general, one feels enormously blessed and saved. I wasn't saved, rather, as if Jeremy suggests, from a previous life, because my life was always kind of odd and wonderful. I feel today, as I'm an old geezer, I'm saved in a world that's going completely crazy.
Yes,
and
true.
where truth is upside down, you know. So if you want miracles, I mean, here I'm sitting here and
living miracle, a living example of miracle.
yeah.
Fantastic. Why it's so important doing these interviews is you as individuals, as Sahaja Yogis, having spent that time, and Shri Mataji in her enormous love that only a mother can have, and in that compassion that she took as the mother. I mean, as you know, as a seeker, she's the only one who actually came to the West and taught the yogis of the West everything they need to know. And that is what we sort of are trying to record, so that, you know, in years to come, in centuries to come, people may find it unbelievable that such an incarnation actually took all that trouble and took all that care and love and transformed our lives, to give life a meaning and a purpose that was connected to the power that created us. So yes, it's very important that you're sharing these examples with us.
Well, we're all different, you see, just the four of us. But it seems to me, I'm a little bit shy of all these things in a sense, but if you look at history and you see the mess that the Romans had to deal with the early Christians, who were complete fanatics, who were bumping themselves off rather than shaking hands with the local Roman governor. I mean, they were fanatics like Daesh or ISIS. And it's, if you look at the state of all the religions when they go to extremes, and as Mother said, beautiful flowers on a tree, but people end up killing each other because they're right and the others are wrong. And the important thing for future generations, if we can just transmit the love and the peace and the beauty of the experience we had. I mean, you would be, going to her feet and she would be drinking tea and laughing, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was captivating.
Amazing. Yes. Yeah. Is there any, I don't have the adequate verbs to describe that experience. I can only feel the joy and the beauty of it, and the cool vibes. Yes, please elaborate on it.
Yes, some little things. Kingsley, yes, Kingsley, do you remember the for Guru Nanak's birthday in 1980, when Shri Mataji was distributing ties to the men?
Oh God!
And everybody got a tie which fitted what they were wearing at that moment.
Absolutely.
Even though the ties were wrapped.
Yes.
Shri Mataji wasn't actually looking at them as she gave them out. I think you had a herringbone shirt and you had a herringbone tie.
Yes, yes.
It was absolutely amazing.
And I think that I don't know if Shri Mataji hadn't even wrapped them herself. If you recall, they were wrapped for her, and she gave the right tie to the right person. I mean, this was extraordinary. I mean, if you want a sweet example of a miracle, yeah, there you are.
Yes.
The attention to detail was exquisite.
Yeah, I only really saw one miracle. This was the last Navaratri Puja that Shri Mataji attended in 2010, and I was working on transport, so I had the occasion to be posted at the back of the castle where Shri Mataji would come out, waiting to take some people to the Pendle, into the hangar. And it was extremely windy, and the yogis were trying to arrange some sort of framework with pieces of wood and plastic sheeting either side of the bridge that leads down from to the castle to the car park, so that Shri Mataji would not be affected by the wind. And every time they put something up, whoosh, the wind came and blew it away, or it broke, or it just collapsed. And the time was approaching when Shri Mataji was going to come. The yogis were getting more and more desperate. And then the door opened and Shri Mataji appeared. The wind stopped. It was like pressing a button. It stopped completely, like switching a light off. And Shri Mataji came down the stairs and got into the car. The car door closed. Whoosh, the wind started again. I think we were all just completely awestruck.
That was the year when we probably had big hailstones and all sorts of weather in that evening before that puja, if I remember correctly. But yes, amazing.
I remember a time we had a journalist that worked for the Argos in Brighton, and I think he wrote a negative article about Sahaja. Well, I mean, it wasn't horrendously negative, but it wasn't complimentary. And I think after that there were the enormous sort of hailstones. Remember, they, enormous things that, never seen anything like them before, and they just, broke people's car windows, and I think that was a result of his writing that.
I remember talking of people writing in newspapers, probably the most extraordinary experience I ever had. I was working in my little travel office in Shoreham by Sea near Brighton, and it would be just before Christmas. I don't know if it was 1983 or 4. No, it couldn't be 4. 83, 82, 83, and there was a half-page advertisement for TM in the Guardian. I think it was the Guardian, and because I had time to read the newspaper, it was a quiet office, and I was furious, and I phoned them up and I said, "What do you know? What the hell you're doing? With this character?" And I really tore them off a strip and said, "You're supposed to be a liberal newspaper, and these people are destroying people's lives, and so on and so on." And later that afternoon, I think it was probably earlier in the afternoon. Later that afternoon, I was correcting a pile of leaflets with misprinted bus timetables or something, and banal on it. And suddenly the top of my head wasn't there to infinity. And I thought, I'm not thinking. You're sort of observing yourself and you aren't thinking, and you're just astonished. And this was the most powerful Kundalini experience I've ever had. And I realized it was, if you like, a boon. It was just a demonstration of, you did the right thing,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's a few things that I was remembering.
Yes, please.
Was when I think when Mother came down to Brighton. I'm not sure if I was in the car. I don't think I was, but I think Mother asked whoever was driving to go around Devil's Dyke in Brighton, and she said no, it's Davies Dyke.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
Mother loved wordplay, didn't she? Devil to Davy. She loved wordplay.
Yes, yeah. And
Yes.
and I remember another time during one of the visits to Brighton, we ended up walking around the lanes with Mother. I think there was a small group of us, and it was after the shops were shut, but we were kind of window shopping, just looking in all the windows, and I remember at the time it felt like it felt like being with your very best friend. You know, it was just, it felt so, just so close and so amazing that we were, I don't know, we were there. Just mother was talking about all the different things in the shops, and there was an Italian shop that sold these beautiful ceramics, and mother went and looked, spent a long time looking in the window, and she said, I've got a weakness for ceramics.
Shri Mataji has a weakness.
Yeah. It was,
Oh,
yeah,
so you
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
beyond.
and after you, and you something like that, and it just made you go, you know, I mean, just thinking about it, just, you know, what can you say? So, and at 1 minute, mother would really make herself one of us and really be there with us, like on that, and just on that such human level. And then the next minute you're in front of God Almighty, you know, it's, yeah, just mind blowing. You can't really get your head around it, you know, at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And I remember another time we had a trip to the beach, and I think mother came and stayed with her I think the grandchildren came as well.
Oh yes, yes, there are
down towards-
photos of that event, isn't it?
Yeah, and we went to the beach, and
The arcade.
yes, went to the arcades, yeah, and the grandchildren all played in the arcades, and then I think it was maybe, I don't know if it was the same day or maybe it was the day before, but we went and sat on the beach, and I always remember there was a couple next to us, and they were there with their, with their bikinis and, suntan lotion, and after about sort of 5-10 minutes, they started to get dressed, and it's like it was like they really didn't know why they were getting dressed, and they just looked so kind of confused and bewildered, but they just put all their clothes on and just sat there, like, and just stayed there, like they like they just really didn't know what was happening to them at all. And then I remember mother told us all to go and foot soak, to go and stand in the sea. And so we all went down and stood in the sea, and then I think it was Pam or someone said, because we were all facing the sea, and then Pam said, we should be facing mother, we just we didn't think. So then we all turned around and so stood in the sea with our hands out to mother, who was still sat on the beach. And yeah, it was just remember it being just such an amazing sort of.
Did you have picnic on the beach on that occasion or other occasions? Because Shri Mataji liked picnics in the summer.
Yeah. I don't remember a picnic, but maybe there was, but I don't remember.
It happened in London a lot later, didn't it? There was a big in the park, picnic in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember, yes, when mother stayed in Pam's house. I remember Pam had this ex-husband who looked really like one of the Asuras in the Indian comics. He had the kind of the moustache, and and he was called Az. And Pam used to go and Pam used to joke, it was like an Asura, So I remember one time when mother was staying at Pam's house and was asleep upstairs, and he turned up at the door, and Pam was having this kind of argument with him, and while mother was there. But after that, I think he just went and left her alone completely. And then we had I think we had a puja there that time, and also some people came. There was a squat nearby, and I think some of the people from the squat had come to the meeting, and then mother asked for them all to come. So all these different people from this squat kind of came, and mother spent a long time talking to them and working on them, and really spent time with them, and sort of listening to them and asking them about about what they did in their lives, and like she really wanted to know everything about them. And I don't think any of them ever stuck to Sahaja Yoga, but it was really like she was all the time working on, on us, on the humans, on the human condition, to try and work it all out. And yeah, amazing. And I think I also remember at the same time, remember, I think Graham, actually Graham's probably told this story before, but we're in Pam's house, and mother was walking up the stairs, and I think Graham said something like, Shri Mataji, what is the something about what is the relevance of human beings in the universe, or something, words to that effect. And then mother said to him, she said, well, of all the universes, this is the most important universe, and of all the sort of species, the human beings are or of all the worlds, the world is the most important in all in the universe, and of all the species, the human beings, and of the human beings, the Sahaja Yogis. And I remember at that point, Pam was there, and she had, for some reason, she had her tooth had dropped out, and she had it stuck in with blue tack. And
blue tack.
No, yeah, no. And at that point, Pam kind of like, just her mouth just dropped open. She was just, and then her tooth came out, but she just kind of she just caught it. And we were just all, it was just an incredible sort of moment, that moment when mother said that. It was, yeah, mind blowing.
So profound, and yet so funny.
Profound, yes, profound, but yeah.
You could write a book about Pamela.
Yeah.
One of the most extraordinary
Yes,
characters we ever knew in Sahaja Yoga.
Yeah.
Sad departed, extraordinary lady with an amazing devotion. She would drop everything and go anywhere in the world to be with Shri Mataji.
Tell us about the boons, please. If you would, the story of the boon that Shri Mataji named Pamela's shop the boon, wasn't it? Would you recollect for us the story about Pamela and her shop, please?
Well, it's just a little shop selling Indian things. I mean, incense and baubles, and I don't remember precisely. I remember the beautiful like rainbow sign that she painted for the shop front. I mean, it was just a little chapter. I mean, if you look at Pamela's life, I mean, my goodness, it's a tiny part of her life. I mean, she ended up as a hatter. She was making hats for London society, and before that she was making jewelry out of seashells, and before Sahaja Yoga she was probably dealing dope and God knows what. And I mean, I remember we had someone who came along to one of those very early programs, perhaps at my place, and he was a lodger at her house in Kemp Town, and one day, I mean, someone comes to the door, and there's this pretty blonde at the door saying hello. And this was Pamela, and she came and she got her realization. And the extraordinary thing was, and it could only have happened with her, was that to explain what Sahaja Yoga was, we did the I Ching together, because I always did the I Ching before Sahaja Yoga almost daily, because it's such a wonderful book. And in fact, the I Ching was there in an exhibition we had of Sahaj books in London once, and it figured as alongside the Bible and the Quran and everything else. And we did the Ching with bamboo stalks and not bamboo, yarrow stalks, and we got the hexagram work on what has been spoiled, moving through to the army, and it completely blew my mind, and I think it hers as well. And that's how Pamela came into Sahaja Yoga. But I mean, Phil.
She was an amazing person. Shortly after Shri Mataji's visit, Pamela was summoned to the school where Matthew was attending. I think Matthew was primary school age.
Yes, I remember
And the
this
headmaster
instance Matthew had
said to her very seriously, yes, yes,
gone.
Mrs. Bromley, your son said the Virgin Mary stayed at your house. And Pamela said, yes, it's true. It's true. Well, and Pamela said how she could get away with all sorts of things. She once came back from India via Paris with 70 kilos of stuff in her bags to sell at the shop. And she didn't have to pay a penny excess bags. And somehow she managed to get it from the airport to the train station, onto the train, onto the boat, because there was no tunnel at the time, onto the train to London. And somehow she managed, I don't know how.
Yeah.
With 70 kilos of stuff.
Amazing. And the name of her shop
was
was
a character.
very symbolic, wasn't it?
Well, you see,
Yes.
Pamela was the first person in our group. I mean, I didn't know Phil had been in India or whatever, or Nepal or whatever. I mean, I never dreamt of going to India. And Pamela was the first person from our little Brighton group who went. So she'd come back and see, how was it, Pamela? You know, and so on. And she was completely serene. I mean, it was as if the most natural thing in the world. She was extraordinary. It's hard to describe Pamela. She was really a one-off and an amazing person. And her love for Mother was exemplary. We can say that of all.
She was,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we had the good fortune to have her for our first series of interviews way back in 2010, and she brought along a load of albums that we had the privilege to see of her times.
You've seen her? Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Yeah, and in fact, Phil recollecting that instance where the headmaster called and Matthew was saying how he told her, yes, God slept in my bed and they couldn't quite believe it. And so his mom was called the next day. And it was just amazing that, you know, these are parallel worlds, how it's so true for us and yet absolutely incomprehensible to some others, many others.
People would be a little bit shy to talk about, like Mother's always talking about the woman sitting next to her on the airplane, you know, having no qualms about talking about the false guru, and yet we're very, very reluctant to mention it. I mean, Pam was just totally, you know, no qualms, no shame, no nothing. It was like, you know, she was just in her element. She was just totally in that world. I mean, I don't know anyone, and I owe a lot to Pam because she gave me realization, and I lived at a house to begin with. Like I moved into Sahaja Yoga, you know.
Amazing.
So that, yeah. But about boons, going back to boons,
yes.
There's a couple of things I would like to say, and
yes, please.
And that is that yeah, it wasn't. I mean, there were pujas when Mother said, "Okay, you know, ask me a boon." And I remember one Guru Puja in Austria. I don't know if you were there, but I'm sure some of the other people here were. And she'd spoken, or with the Guru Puja, and she'd spoken about how we have to become the Guru, you know. And then at the end, she said, "Okay, ask me a boon." And of course, we bowed down, and I'm sure a lot of us asked to become the Guru. And Mother said, "And don't ask to become a Guru." It was like, what are we supposed to ask for? Anyway, no, I think the real thing is that again, you know, another important lesson I learned was be careful what you ask for.
Yes.
Because you'll get it, you know, and in Sahaja Yoga you did. I mean, Mother blessed us all with what we've dreamt of. I mean, look at the possibilities people have. They can become artists, they can become musicians, they can go on stage, they can speak in public, you basically can do whatever you wanted. And what I was saying before about how you have to go things, you also have to face your worst fear. You know? Like Like it's all the things that I've always never wanted to do, you know, like, and again, never say never because it'll happen, you know. I never wanted to be a teacher. I never, I ended up being a teacher, but I never wanted to live in Milan. I ended up living in Milan. I never wanted to live in that part of Milan, and I lived in that part of Milan. You know, it's like you have to be so careful.
I can so relate to it.
Yeah, because wherever your attention goes, that is what the divine works out. So it doesn't distinguish. I was listening to someone talk about this. Very interesting, because the divine doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you don't want. And that's why Mother said again about this, the importance of attention, because wherever your attention is, you go towards that. So that's why people who've always got their attention on negative things happen to them because they've got their attention on negative things. And people who are positive, and that's why Mother says, put your attention on the spirit and you'll go to it, you know. So that, but in the West, we don't understand this. We don't have this concept of how important the attention is, because and they were the boons, really, that we didn't really consider them boons, but they were, you know. I mean, and again, going back to what Shri Mataji said, it's like, for you, it's miracles, but for the divine, it's normal, you know. It's just a bit like that expression, like the impossible we do immediately, the miracles take a bit longer, you know. It's like, but for the divine, boons are something, you know, they're not miracles. They're not miracles. They're
it's something when the divine is pleased, that the divine grants.
Or you know, something has to work out, or okay. Yes, maybe you please the divine in some way, or you just put your attention on it, and you know, I mean, if it's in your spiritual, if it's going to help in your spiritual growth, then you know, it will happen, you know. And even
do you like it or not?
Yeah, exactly, you know.
Yes.
And
and that's why it's best to have the pure desires, my husband says. No, this desire, that desire, just the pure desire.
Yes,
the pure spirit.
But you see, that's a curious thing, you know. Pure desire is like a contradiction, you know. I mean, you shouldn't have desires, you know, even, and that's also with Mother, you see, the way she says, oh, I don't have desires, you know, but then she does, you know, because what is going on, you know, it's the desire of the divine, all this Maya. Yeah. I mean, it's her play. We didn't do anything. We didn't ask for this. It's her play. It's her desire. So it's kind of, it's interesting. There's a play within the play, and we're just literally actors on the stage. So
reminding one of the statements that you'd made earlier about was it the game of the spirit or being the spirit?
Yeah,
elaborate.
I would love to hear that, but in those days these talks weren't recorded. So, but it was something. But basically, it says, she's saying, like, life is a game, you know, and you have to know the rules of the game. The problem is you don't know the rules. You want to play the game, but you don't know the rules.
Right. What are the? Go on. Sorry.
No, sorry. You asked the question. What are the rules?
Yeah.
If we knew.
If we knew, no, yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, one of the rules is that, you know, that you have to, that tapas is related to spiritual growth. You can't grow without some tapas, without some effort, and this is extremely important, the way that people don't realize the difference between sacrifice and suffering. You know, they think when something happens that they suffer, then it's something negative, you know. But I mean, you know, look at all the deities, all the incarnations. Look at who you want, you know. they suffer, you know, but suffering is a choice in the sense that that it's okay, maybe a sacrifice, but it's a choice to suffer. I mean, if you see it, I mean, like in the early days, we had this thing about okay, yes, tapas, but you know, like Indian tourists were a lot of tapas involved, but then the mother was saying, enjoy your tapas.
Yeah.
That's the art. It's not suffering. Enjoy your tapas, you know. And so there was a whole new dimension to spiritual growth, you know, and because that's the game. It's like knowing, if you know it's for your growth, then you can enjoy it.
The other I think it's about a week, 10 days ago, we were talking to Dr. Nigam of Delhi, and he was saying how it was Shri Mataji told the Sahaja Yogis of those days that it's very important to be joyful, not to be sad. And it's important to be in that state for the Kundalini for Mother Kundalini to rise. And that's just corroborating what you're saying about, as long as we're enjoying ourselves, the suffering no longer is a suffering, it's part of a play. The divine.
Exactly. And people don't want to, people are afraid, like Shimachi was saying, like how people that she asked someone to do something and, oh, mother, no, because I don't want my ego to develop, you know, because basically it would involve maybe some suffering or sacrifice or whatever. But no, I mean, it's enjoyment. It's so important. I remember one old couple going up to Shimachi after the meeting and asking for her advice, you know, this, and she just looked at them and just said, just enjoy yourself. So yeah, again, you know, for English, that's like enjoy, you know, what for a lot of people, it's a sort of, it's not a natural state. You know?
No, if I may say so.
Yeah, I mean, for a foreigner coming to England, I mean, it must be very strange. And me living abroad, I think, you know, Shimachi, partly because we're the heart, she really wanted the English to leave England and circulate, you know, and that's why, look, you know, you've got Kingsley in Switzerland, you've got, well, Phil's been all over the place, I've been all over the place. A lot of English was sent out, you know, to spread the energy of the heart, I think, and I think it's really important for the conditioning of all Sahaja Yogis to live abroad, you know, to get out of your conditionings of your country, especially people like Kingsley who are
I had to be dragged out of that flat bodily by the other yogis.
I was there.
You were there. I was so attached to my little flat, my £25 a month flat above a Chinese restaurant, and I didn't want to go to an ashram. I mean, good heavens, and I swore I would never leave England. And I ended up, I was very anti-bourgeois, and I ended up being married to a Swiss diplomat and living everywhere in Europe.
Well,
going to India and going to Nepal and Egypt and, oh God, you know, and it's the funny thing is, I didn't know what my biggest desires really were, and I've lived them all. It's extraordinary. I mean, I couldn't get girlfriends; they were too sensible, and all my friends and mother married me to the most extraordinary woman in the world. You don't even know what you want, and
I probably never told you this, Kingsley, but it was in India, and Shri Mataji called for me, okay, and I went to Shri Mataji, and she was there, and mother was rolling around laughing, and she said, "Jeremy, you'll never guess, I found someone for Kingsley," and she was rolling about the floor laughing. I mean, you know, she was, when mother laughs, it's just, you know, the most amazing.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that, Jeremy, because really, when we were on that week tour before we got married in '84, and we went before mother and bowed to her, and she was on a date, and there were lots of flowers. We offered her flowers, and she was throwing flowers at our Sahasrara and laughing and laughing and laughing. She said, "You are my master stroke," and she also. And then when we were on honeymoon in Venice, we actually had the temerity to send Shri Mataji a postcard from Venice. And later that year, she said, I was the Romeo of the year.
Oh, no.
I think when you talk about joy, I mean, it's just that, isn't it? I mean, one melts.
Okay.
Have you seen that video? There was a video circulating just very recently. I mean, it was Jose, who's now out of Sahaja Yoga, but he was doing his imitations of all the yogis in front of Shri Mataji.
Yes.
Have you seen that one? And she was again really in fits of laughter. I mean, and it was really, really funny. And it brought back those magic days when we were just having fun.
Mm.
I mean, okay, he got a little bit out of hand, and mother didn't like people making fun of Sahaja Yoga, but it was just making fun of people's ego in a way.
Yeah.
And
Mother's sense of humor was extraordinary. I mean, the stories she would tell, and you'd end up rolling on the floor yourself with laughter. I mean, there was the story of old Mr. Pai, who was in the river in India, and and she was imitating him saying mantras, and his false teeth fell out. And he's looking for Mother was telling us this, and it was just extraordinary. We often think of that one.
Wow.
No, she imitated all the leaders, and she was, really making fun of them. No, I mean, it was just, she was just so approachable.
Yes.
And just wanting to be like one of us. And
humor opens the heart.
Yes. And there's a lovely word in Italian, I don't know if you know, which is spiritoso. Do you know what spiritoso means?
Oh, please enlighten us.
Spiritoso means that kind of light-humoredness.
Oh.
And so the spirit is connected with humor.
Mm.
So
really?
Yes. Shri Mataji said you can always tell a spiritual person because they're funny, they're like, or the contrary, you can tell when someone isn't spiritual because they've got no sense of humor.
Oh gosh. And now that's a sign.
There you go. Another pearl of wisdom.
Which brings us to each one of you. What are the kind of things that you sort of remember Shri Mataji telling you, advising you, telling you off perhaps, or cajoling you that you'd like to share with us, please?
I can. So when Mother came to Brighton, when we were, I think that was when we were in Stanmer Park Road, and remember Mother being in the bedroom, and I went in and she asked me to sit down on the bed next to her, and then she told me how Sri Ganesha was made. And I mean, obviously I'd had the cancer, I was not in wasn't in a good way. My left side was it was a problem, but after that something in me shifted. It was
Tell us that story of Shri Mataji telling you of how Sri Ganesha was made, please.
Well, it was the story. She told me the story of Sri Ganesha and how he was, and how Sri Parvati had made him out of clay, and how he stood outside of the bedroom, and so it's
amazing. That's great. Amazing. Thank you.
Well,
it reminds me again, Stanmer Park Road. Again, you have to remember I was quite new in Sahaja Yoga, and Shri Mataji was there and working on in that front room. Remember, Kay, it was quite a small room, and Mother was sitting there in the front, and I don't know, there were some new people there, and there was one boy who was ill. I don't think he wasn't seriously ill, just had a cough or flu or something. And Shri Mataji asked for some honey. So I went to get some honey from the kitchen, and because this boy was like coughing, and this honey was quite thick. So I thought, well, this honey is going to be too thick. So I thought of heating some water and mixing it with the honey, you know. But obviously this took a bit of time to heat the kettle, and someone came in and said, Shri Mataji's asking where you are, you know, where are you? What are you doing? I said, okay, I'm bringing the honey. But it was a very good lesson for me, because when I got back into the room, Shri Mataji said, what are you doing? Where have you been? And I said, I explained I was heating the water. And she said, I just asked for honey. Okay? If I asked for honey, I want honey. If I wanted it with water, I would have asked for it with water. It's like, just do what I say.
Yeah.
This was a very, very important lesson. Don't interpret or don't go off on your own idea. Just do what I say.
Fabulous.
I mean, again, in a very sweet way, but it was firm. I mean, luckily, I've seen people really being blasted, if you like. Luckily, I've never had that. But like even in the way Kingsley was saying, you know, how Shri Mataji behaved with them, it was with sweetness and with compassion. At the beginning, I don't know whether Mother ever was irate, or I never remember seeing Mother angry until much later.
And I mean, any advice that Shri Mataji gave you as individuals for, you know, careers, for work-life balance, married, children, anything that you'd like to share, please?
Nothing in particular. I mean, the only time that I wanted Shri Mataji's advice, because before the ISPS was ready, I mean, ISPS was just a refuge in the mountains. And I don't know if you've ever been there. I've actually never been. I don't know if you ever saw it in its original state.
Not in the original state. We had the privilege to work there.
Right.
My husband and our children studied there. So.
Yeah, my first child, both my children went for some period. Anyway, so but when my daughter was one of the first children to go there.
Wow.
Anyway, so it was just really a couple of huts in the middle of nowhere, you know. I mean, it was really very, very primitive. But anyway, it wasn't ready. They were trying to get it ready. So the Swiss had arranged for all the children to go to. They'd made, I don't know whether it was the ashram, but they'd made a kind of school for them, and there was only about 10 kids at the beginning, you know, and mainly Swiss, you know, all the children of the Calvin family, or, you know, and a few others. And anyway, so they had a teacher and everything, and they'd got everything ready. And then Shri Mataji said, so where are the children going to go? And the Swiss said, don't worry, Mother, we've got it all worked out. You know, they're coming to us. And Shri Mataji says, oh, yes, really? Where are you going to put them? Oh, in Switzerland. No, Mother did not want them to go to Switzerland. So we were in the ashram there was a very nice ashram in Milan, just north of Milan, where I was staying. And she said, no, they can come here. It's very nice here. You know, there's a big garden, you know, and she wanted them in Italy. And then, so at one point, before they came, I went to Shri Mataji and I said, so Mother, could you give me some advice what to do with these children, you know, because they were going to come to our ashram. And she just looked at me and just said, I mean, you're a Sahaja Yogi, you know, get on with it, you know. No, in those days, I don't remember Mother giving any advice specifically on things, you know. It was, I mean, it was much more spontaneous. in certain things. I don't know if anyone else has got some specific advice, but she never gave any marriage apart from the talks, you know.
Yes.
But they were public. I don't know if she gave any individual talks, maybe to someone else.
Kingsley? Phil? Kay?
Myself, not really that I remember.
Oh. Hmm.
I don't know about advice. I mean, apart from everything that she told us, I mean, all I ever had to do was say yes, please, and thank you, really.
That's it.
Yes.
You summed it up absolutely brilliantly, Kingsley.
But those talks, those early talks, I mean,
Yes,
she was
it's all
giving
that.
advice for every little detail of,
Yes.
you know, what we had
Yes.
to do, what we did do, what we didn't do, what we should and shouldn't do. I mean, even to brushing your teeth and combing your hair, and you know, every little detail she was giving.
Mm.
So there wasn't much individual advice.
No, it's
all there.
it's just so nice to have this opportunity that Shri Mataji has given us to remember those times with all of you. Thank you so much for being with us this evening and sharing your lovely memories and moments with Shri Mataji. I mean, even now, just remembering how Shri Mataji, how we would do puja to Shri Mataji, or just spend an evening with her at Chiswick when she was in London, and before that in Ganapati Pule. It's just like beyond time, as of yesterday, wasn't it? And so joyful.
When did you come in, Sushmila?
Ooh, that's I
Yeah,
can't
come
quite
on.
pin it down. But it's really, you were talking about the miracle photos, and you know, a colleague, a friend, and she actually lives in Switzerland, but I'm not sure if she's in the collective, so to say. She showed me the book of miracle photographs. We were working at India Today in Hamilton House in Connaught Place. The office is no longer there. And we went to the Palika car park. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You know, the Palika Bazaar car park in the center of Delhi. And we were both very excited because I saw Shri Mataji's photograph as a child, and I asked this friend who was visiting her auntie. I was just struck by Shri Mataji's photo. And I asked, who is she? And you know, you have all photos, but Shri Mataji's photograph is special. And it just did something, but I couldn't quite pin it down. I just very shyly asked, who is she? And she said, oh, she's my auntie's, my Masi's guru.
Mm.
And I couldn't get any more than that. And then there were public programs in Lucknow, where the city where I grew up and come from. And my parents and I would say, oh, okay, we'll go to the program, but somehow some visitor would drop in or something would happen and we wouldn't go there. And it took me to how one of you were mentioning earlier, that it's so important that there's someone who actually kind of handholds you when you are new to Sahaja Yoga. And that actually happened way later when I was working in Delhi with India Today, and this colleague and we were sharing a very nice accommodation. We were hosting a golfing tournament for the CEOs as part of our company event. And at night, we were all exhausted, and she took out this photo of Shri Mataji and put it by the bedside and took out this divine cool breeze and was reading it. I was like, wow, this is my moment. If I don't ask her now, I'll never know who this amazing lady is, and I want to know her so much. So I asked her, and she said, oh, she is Shri Mataji Nirmala Devi, and her mother is a devotee of Shri Mataji. And she said, oh, I can give you the address of the center that's nearest to you. And so she did as soon as we were back at work. And on a Thursday in January, I got my so-called self-realization, which was amazing. It was just like when the lady Malnidhi, she raised my Kundalini, I could just feel the vibrations going up, and the feeling in my heart was I had come home, because even working in Delhi, I mean, being an Indian, I still didn't feel it was normal the way things were, the way people lived or did things. And when I got my realization, I was like, wow, I've come home. And so Friday, I took the train home to Lucknow and gave my parents the self-realization and took them to the Lucknow Center. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say. And then,
How long ago was that?
oh, that's ages ago. That's late 90s, early 2000. Yeah, and then Shri Mataji matched Shankarji, my husband, and I at Ganapati Phule in 2001. And then we got married in 2002 in Sri Ganesh Puja in Kabela. And more recently, and I'm telling you my whole life history here, I'm sorry. But the red triangle, the energy triangle, was what my father used to talk about when we were very little. And he was reading about these energy centers. So
Wow.
I'm really pleased to hear that you could feel the divine cool vibrations out there, because I never actually knew. And then yeah, more recently, July 2011, and again, it's a miracle, but it's normal. So we had this desire, both of us, that our children should go to ISPS, to International Sahaj Public School. And so we took our son, our elder child, there. And the principal of the school, she said to my husband, oh, we need a geography teacher. Somehow we were just talking and it came up, and his subject at uni was geography. And so I looked at him and he was like, no, we are detached parents. We're going back home. And so when I asked him, why don't you take it up? She's like, he gave me a nice spiel about being a detached mother and how we should be yogis. And I said, fine. We came back. Next year, our daughter, she wouldn't let us sort of be. She was at Borotin, but she wanted to be with her brother. So she kept pestering, I want to go and be with my brother. I want to be there. And she was there when we dropped him, so she knew where she was going, basically. So we took her next year, both the children next year. And that year, they needed an English teacher. Now, he's English, native English, and he had taught English as a foreign language in Oxford Street for several years in London. Oh, yeah, that. And I didn't say anything this time. So I was shoe beating something with a friend of mine, and my husband comes after his wash and his sun hat and everything. It's like, do you want to check the vibrations about this? And I was like, oh, that's nice. And it was so cool. It was so cool. So we went there in 2011. We were there till 2015. He came back in April. I came back in July, and the children continued their studies there. So yeah, our son, he did from class 1 to class 10. And then he did his A levels here in England. And our daughter did class 1 to class 12 there. She completed it last year. So it's really nice to see how Shri Mataji's sort of worked it all out effortlessly for us.
Well, that's interesting, because you come from the other side of the fence, as it were.
Yes. But I could so relate to you, all the things you were saying, being in the West, where the culture is completely different.
Yes.
And things like dharma and, well, there are the 10 commandments and the values and things, but they're so depleted. So it's just amazing. And this wave is sweeping the world. I guess the hope is Shri Mataji and the Sahaja Yogis.
Yes.
Lovely. Sorry, I'm going to have to step out.
I think so. Thank you so much for joining us, and lots of love from all of us here.
Yeah, nice to see you again, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Yes, nice
it's
to see you.
lovely to meet up.
And
We'll have to do
Olivia.
It's taken how many years? Like almost 40 years to get all together. I think we've never been all together in the same room before, but yeah, do it again sometime.
Thank you, Kay. You really made that happen. Thank you so much, Kay, Kingsley, Jeremy, and Phil, for your time and sharing your stories about Shri Mataji.
But this is actually just the tip of the iceberg, really. I mean,
Isn't it?
We just touched on stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
but there's so much more, and so many people have been trying to. Again, you see, this is this collective desire working out, because so many people want these stories, you know, and
Yes.
want to know. And I really admire you for doing all this work.
Not at all.
But
Yes,
it's all
thank you,
part of the
Sushmita.
play.
Thank
Not
you.
at all.
It's
No,
a
no,
very,
no.
very
It's
important
Pankaji.
thing, because, and especially doing it because, you know, to sit down and write it, you think, oh my God, you know, with a blank piece of paper, it doesn't really work. But when you get together and, you know, with a group of people like this, and one thing leads to another, and then, you know, we remind each other of things, and you learn a lot, you know, and you remember a lot. And so,
Yeah.
no, it's very, very important. And there's so many things which weren't recorded in the early days, and which, if we don't put down now, if we don't, you know, put it in some sort of record or something
outside of the talks that Mother gave.
Yeah, and you know, this will be lost, and so much has been. I mean, so many people aren't in Sahaja Yoga anymore for one reason or another, you know, and so yeah, valuable job. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much for your love and sharing the stories, which just multiplies manifold. And do pen down instances that you remember, and at some point in the future, maybe we'll regroup and share.
I've got some notes. They're just in note form, but yeah, just because someone was going to do this a similar sort of thing, but never got around to it. So I did kind of think, oh well, what am I going to say? But there's as I say, lots more to come. Okay.
Yeah.
Love to
Yes.
everyone.
I was just thinking there are also because there are some people that you know, there are the Bevans and Mark Tickell. Obviously, Paul Winters, he's doing his own thing, but there are sort of more people I'm sure that would contribute.
Yeah.
So just remembering all of them as well.
Yes, no, thank you so much. And yes, we'd love to hear their stories, except we weren't there then, so we don't know. It's very, very, very helpful of you all to actually be so willing and open-hearted to share these. Thank you so much. And love from
really enjoyable
and I. Sorry, go on.
It's just so enjoyable to do so.
Yes.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, thanks, Kay.
Love to everyone.
No, thanks.
Thank you.
Sushmita.
Thank you, Jai Shri Mataji. Thank you so much for joining us, and speak
bye,
soon.
everyone. Take care. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you all. Yes, lovely.
Look forward
Jai Shri Mataji.
to seeing you
Jai
all.
Shri Mataji.
Jai Shri Mataji.